Hello, and welcome to episode 508 of the Unauthorized History of the Pacific War podcast. My name is Seth Paridon, historian and deputy director of the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum. And with me, as always, is my co host, historian and author. And I just forgot what the hell I was going to say.
Love it.
Yeah, well,
leave
you
it.
know what?
Let's leave this in. Leaving it in.
Leaving it in. Good buddy, historian and author John Parshall. How are you, John?
I am well, thank you. I thought since we're going to be talking about Pearl Harbor today that I would rock, a little festive rising sun red, but in a floral Hawaiian kind of pattern. So, I've got both angles covered.
I do like me a good Hawaiian shirt. I know everybody makes comments about the shirts, but I do, or as Bill would say, an aloha shirt. I do like a good aloha shirt, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of Hawaii, have we done our shout out for Old Salt coffee recently?
Not recently, and I think we're overdue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, by God, here it is, the shout out for Old Salt coffee. Makers of fine coffee. They don't officially support us, but we like them. That's my wife's Christmas present. Actually, although I have to say, I broke the handle on my Old Salt coffee mug, and I'm going to have to get another one for myself. I think that's going to be my Christmas present because that's my favorite teacup, and I can't live without it. Anyway, thank you, Old Salt. You guys are great. There you go.
You guys are awesome. I'm in dire need of more. I have one bag left in the house, and that is, it's danger low. That's danger low.
Danger low.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, definitely. If you haven't tried the Old Salt coffee, please do. OldSaltCoffee.com. Those guys are absolutely fantastic people. They always give us a thumbs up. We do the same thing for them. Buy their coffee. It's really good stuff. So.
Yep.
All right. So the footage that we're going to go through today, if you haven't guessed, this is another one of our archival footage episodes. But if you haven't figured that out, then shame on you. But we're going to go through some really, really, really cool footage here today. Just to put it out there, there are several reels that we're going to go through. What I did pre this episode was basically take the highlights out of several reels and put them into this one highlight reel, if you will, because there's like 12 or 16 reels of archival footage here.
Right.
At the end of this, I will put all the narrow numbers 428 NPC, So if you have the desire, you can go look it up on NARA's site and go through the whole thing. But what I'm going to show you, or what we're going to show you rather, is pretty much the best of the best.
Cool.
So that being said,
although I am disappointed because you did, as you told me, you cut out the hula girls, and
I did. Everybody likes a hula girl. Who doesn't like a hula girl?
Right.
So just to be 100% clear on why there are hula girls on here, if you look here, you'll see this name right here. This guy, this is Ford. This is the man who was in charge of this operation, and it is none other than John Ford. John Ford was, if you don't know who he was born, he's a Mainer. He was born in Maine. He is my favorite Hollywood director of all time. Made some of the greatest movies in the history of movies, not the least of which are The Grapes of Wrath and The Searchers, two of the best movies ever made. Searchers is the best movie ever made. But go ahead. You were going to say something?
No.
I can rail about Pappy Ford for days, man. He's amazing. But anyway, regardless of this, John Ford was, he always had an affinity for the United States Navy. He actually tried to enlist in the Naval, he tried to get into the Naval Academy, and he failed the damn entrance exam. But he always had a love for the Navy, much like FDR. And in 1934, he basically wormed his way into the United States Navy, took the rank of lieutenant commander. And as the war went on, as the war progressed, he, along with the help of Wild Bill Donovan, founded what's called Field Photographic Unit. Okay. And they were assigned to basically go out and shoot the war, document the war. Ford recruited a lot of people that he used to work with in Hollywood, not the least of which is this guy right here. This dude's name was Arthur Arling. He's the shooter. He's the cameraman on a lot of this. Of course, John Ford shot a lot of the stuff himself, too. Mm-hmm. But there were several other guys. Greg Toland was one of the guys. He was a famous Hollywood cinematographer. So there's a lot of people in here. Really, really famous people doing this. And what's important to note, and what you're going to see here, All of this footage, all of it, was shot between January and May 1942.
Okay.
There's a gap for April 1942, and you're going to wonder why. Was there a gap for it? Because John Ford was aboard USS Salt Lake City during the Doolittle raid. So
right. Okay. Right. Right.
He wasn't here, but we'll get to that. All right, let's go through some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So this right here, this is Kaneohe.
Yeah.
And what's going on here? Do you know, John? Do you know Mark Poole, the artist Mark Poole?
No, I don't.
Okay, he's a aviation artist. He's a fantastic artist, and he's a member of the Nerderati.
Okay.
He's a big dude on like rondelles and trying to pinpoint exact location.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's our kind of dork. And I showed him this, and we both came to the same conclusion: is that this is field carrier landings for VB6.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can see what's really cool about this airplane right here. We'll let it go through.
And then I'm just sort of nerding out too. That we're looking back up towards the Pali overlook and that kind of thing. You come up and over to come down to Kaneohe. That's on the north side of Oahu. But yeah, this is just super cool watching these guys come in and do landings.
And this is beautiful footage. And that's a hallmark of John Ford, is that the guy had, obviously he had a cinematographer's eye. Yeah. It's just absolutely beautiful footage. The color is incredibly vibrant. And he got that color film because he was John Ford.
Yeah.
John Smith aboard, USS Yorktown is not going to be able to get that footage, but John Ford, or film rather.
Right.
John Ford is. So, and what you see is it's the same dude making these field carrier landings. He's doing, essentially touch and goes, but he does put one down here.
And I'm just doing a little real time here.
Mm-hmm.
So that plane, the first plane that we saw land there, that's the B-15.
Correct.
That plane is going to be flown by Ensign Goldsmith during the Battle of Midway, and
he is going to hit Kaga with that plane. There it is. Yeah.
And if you recall when we did the Yorktown, the footage of Yorktown.
Yes.
There were 2 Enterprise VB6 SBDs that landed.
And one of them is that plane.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Isn't that cool? I saw that and I went, and I started digging into the records and I went, oh my God.
Nerderati. That's good stuff. Yeah, that's very, very neat. So, that's just, I don't know. That's just warming the cockles of my soul. To we know where that plane is now. It's in the hold of Yorktown on the bottom of the sea, but we've seen it. That's so cool.
Indeed.
Anyway.
Indeed. No, it is super cool. When I saw that, my heart went a flutter just a little bit.
Right.
And I started putting piecing the puzzle together. I'm like, holy smokes.
Which gives you yet another indication as to why we were not kissing many girls in high school. Because we were doing this.
And my heart still goes a flutter when I see bureau numbers and things like that.
Keep going, man. Oh my Lord.
So Mark, really, Mark is, if you haven't looked up Mark Poole, MarcPoole.
Okay.
He's on Facebook, his aviation art. I mean, the guy is,
I wonder if on Facebook
stupid talented. He's incredibly talented. He lives right here in Mississippi, but he's a great dude. Anyway, he and I were going back and forth on this a little bit, and it is definitely Bombing 6. It is definitely, whether that's Goldsmith flying that plane, I don't know.
Who knows?
I have no idea. I mean, but it is definitely Bombing 6, and we're putting this around May 20th through May 27th, 1942.
So this is right before the battle. Yeah.
Correctamundo. Yeah. And the reasons for that are these big ass rondelles on these wings right here.
That's the technical term.
Technical term. And I'm going to back it up a smidge. These things are so dang big. I mean, they obviously,
yeah,
they're dang near wrapping around.
Yeah, they are enormous, aren't they?
The wing, yeah, they're huge.
Yeah,
absolutely huge. And as you know, on May 15th, 1942, the order was cut to eliminate the little red dot in around rondelle and make the star larger. Probably not that large, but regardless, Chiefs are going to do what Chiefs are going to do. And what I found interesting, it's very obvious, is it still has the red and white stripe on the tail.
So, this is where I have to do contrition here because, God bless it. Mark Poole is actually a Facebook friend of mine. I've never met the man face to face, and here I am. So I don't know the guy, which gives you an indication of kind of how my Facebook is sort of morphed into. Mark, I'm sorry, man, my bad, mea culpa. Anyway, pray continue.
Jesus, I'm sure he'll get over it, but yeah. So this is a bombing 6 aircraft, obviously, and it's neat for multiple reasons, not the least of which is it's sitting in the hangar on USS Yorktown right now.
Yeah,
but it's got the early second pattern World War II U.S. Navy rondelles on these monstrous stars. Yeah, and it's still got the red and white tail stripe, which one has to assume that within the next day or two, those are going
to be painted out.
Yeah, they're not there that way, but it's still cool nonetheless, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And anytime I get to see an SBD, it's a good
right.
time.
It's a good day.
It is a good day. So this isn't all in the same area, and I kind of lumped all the footage if I could to be so we're not bouncing all over the map. This is still Kaneohe. I don't remember what scouting squadron this is because
I don't either.
Of course, after Pearl Harbor, when all those PBYs get shot to bejesus.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do our plug here. If anyone's interested in what happens at Kaneohe, the book that you want to get is this one by Mike Wanger, No One Avoided Danger, from U.S. Naval Institute Press. And he's got, all the details. Mike goes and finds the architectural drawings and, the whole schmear. This is the book. So anyway, I just love the fact that these guys are in the water, having to drag these things in.
So the seaplane ramps, I'll be honest with you. All the times I've been out to Hawaii and been to Kaneohe, I've yet to go on to the actual base. I have heard
I've been there once.
Seaplane ramps are still there.
Yes, they are.
Cool. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, they are.
So that would mean theoretically,
or they were when I was there. That was about 10 years ago, but nevertheless,
that where these birds are being hauled up, the ramps are still there. I know they are in Pensacola, but So this is the exact same time frame, and I say it's the exact same time frame because it's not far from where Arling shot that SBD landing. It's maybe several hundred yards away, but you can tell again. And again, this is all the nerderati, but it's all part of why we're doing the footage stuff. Is that the order has been passed down. These dudes haven't had a chance to eliminate the rondelle on the aircraft.
Yep, that's neat.
The old
just a complete segue to another seaplane base. When we take our guests down to Peleliu, we stay at the Pacific Resort at Karor. Freeze it right here, by the way. And that resort sits on an old Japanese seaplane base, and there are still ramps there too. So I like to imagine that their guys were in the water doing the same thing, hauling their jakes out and that kind of stuff. But it's really neat. There's still bunkers next to that resort down at the water level that guarded the entrances to the two seaplane ramps on either side of the peninsula. There is kind of cool. Anyway, the thing that I find interesting is, check out this dude on top of the wing here in the upper left corner. He's got a fire extinguisher, and we're going to catch a glimpse of it a little bit later in this footage, which again gives you an indication of there it is. Right? Yeah. Boom. These engines will catch on fire if things go pear-shaped. So anyway.
You don't realize, have you ever been to the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola?
No, I haven't, but I hear it's amazing.
It's unbelievable. You need to go. They have a PBY in there, and they have a cutaway.
Yeah.
And it is a big airplane.
Is it?
It's a lot of bird, man. I mean, they had like 5 or 6 dudes in there.
Yeah, right.
And they could move around comfortably. It's not like they were, sandwiched on top of one another like in a B-17 up in the
they really are.
Room to move.
Okay, interesting.
I
got to go see that someday.
Yeah, you do. It's a fantastic museum. Absolutely fantastic. So so they get these PBYs coming in here, and they send them over from the States like right after Pearl Harbor, because most of the ones that were in Kaneohe on December 7th,
as we're going to see,
yes, exactly,
trashed. Yep, and here we go. Yeah, I always like to think about these two dudes back in the blisters back on the aft part of the fuselage there. That's got to be a greenhouse.
Oh yeah,
100 bajillion degrees inside there, again with the red tail stripes.
They just I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume they haven't had a chance to do what they needed to do. But yeah, it's a cool bird. Yeah. So the reason why Ford, well, there's multiple reasons why Ford was out in Hawaii at this time, not the least of which is he had orders cut to send him to Hawaii to go out there and go film this stuff. But he was also out there shooting B-roll for what would eventually become the documentary that he made that actually won him an Oscar during the war, December 7th. Mm-hmm. And so this stuff that you're seeing here, this is the graveyard of the PBYs. If you remember the first time we did an archival episode, we showed all the PBYs being attacked.
Yes.
At Kaneohe. Well, here's the results of that attack.
Yeah.
Of those attacks. These are the same airplanes that were hit on the 7th of December, and they just kind of heaped them in a big boneyard, if you will.
Right. No, that will not buff out.
No. No.
Yeah.
No coat of paint is going to fix that.
It's going to fix that. Mm-hmm. Which again, this gives you an indication. And I know I've yacked about this before, but if you do the breakdown of the sorties that the Japanese sent out that morning, half of them are devoted to air supremacy missions rather than attacking the anchorage per se. And Kaneohe was definitely on the list because they knew that there were scouting assets up here and they did not want those scouts, finding their fleet. And so, they came in and crushed this place.
Yeah, they did a hell of a job.
Yeah. These were the level bombers from Shokaku and Zuikaku that were in charge of doing that. And one of the reasons, of course, they were given that task is they were not regarded as necessarily being up to snuff to attack the anchorage itself. And so they were tasked solely with air suppression and level bombing and that kind of thing.
So you can even see they're through here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a Shokaku dive bomber that is the first plane to drop a bomb during the war when they attacked Wheeler Field in the middle of the island. Yeah, that's a mess.
Yeah, and if you go back to the episode that we did when we showed the Pearl Harbor attack footage, you can see some of these things on fire. And it's not John Ford didn't light these on fire for effect. They were already on fire or had been.
Yeah,
clearly.
I've been wondering what these are. I'm like practice bombs.
I think so. Yeah. Because I'm looking at that. I mean, it's very evident that these have fire damage. I mean, it's, something caught fire near there and roasted the paint off. That's why they're all roasted and look like crap.
Yep.
And if it's a real bomb, it would have gone kaboom a long time ago. And they certainly didn't have them stacked like that. So, I'm thinking those are just practice dummy bombs.
Yeah. These are empty, practice bombs. No sand or whatever the hell to put them. Yeah.
And, that'll give you an indication, too, of they're just trying to get, because, I mean, waste not, want not.
Yep.
They're going to use these things again, but they just needed to get that area clear. They needed to get everything operating as quickly as they could again.
Yep.
And they probably honest to God, took a damn bulldozer and just shoved all this stuff into a heap.
Yeah. Just get it out of here.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah. Get it the heck out of here. So we can kind of go through it. But, I mean, there's hundreds of these things in here.
Yeah, there are.
And they're big. I mean, it's not, doesn't look that big because the camera's close. It's like, it's big because it's friggin' big. These are large, I would imagine, 1,000-pound.
That's exactly what I would guess too.
Yeah. There's a lot here in the boneyard that he filmed. And again, he's filming B-roll. If you know movie terms, B-roll, it's just filler. Filler shots for his film. And he's filming all this stuff for the December 7th movie. And it was used elsewhere, but it was mostly used in the December 7th film, which is available online, by the way. You can check it out. There's two versions. There's like a 22-minute version and like a 43-minute version, and it's pure propaganda. But it's artifact of its times, if you will. So we can go through some of this stuff and move through a little bit quicker.
Sure.
That wind's really kicking here, but all right.
Yeah, I was just nerding out on the looks like the engine. All those engines are
Pratt & Whitney R1830 Twin Wasps.
There you go.
There it is.
There they are. There's one right there.
Crunched.
Yep. So you're looking at the props, and I mean, I got to wonder, I'm just looking at this, and this is dawning on me right now. Why are the props bent? Because they weren't in the air. Usually when you see a prop like this, somebody bellied in, but I'm gonna assume just because they were on fire and they just kind of went.
That would be That'd be my guess too. Yeah. Footage here of a Japanese plane on the seaside. The tail is clearly not a zero. It's either a Kate or a Val. It feels to me it feels like a Val, but I don't see the little sort of spine that would be in front of the tail that kind of angles into the fuselage. I don't know. I tried to do some research and figure out what plane this is, and Mike Wenger would probably know this off the top of his head, but I wasn't able to figure out what it is other than Japanese.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that Ford probably had people haul this out to the beach because with the tide coming in and out and in and out and in and out, and again, he gets out there in January 1942.
Yeah.
He gets out to Pearl Harbor. And the stuff that he shoots in Kaneohe, it jumps around in terms of date. Like the SBD that we see in the beginning that we just showed you all a little bit ago, that is in May 1942. There is no question about that. And I'll tell you, because it's Enterprise, because Enterprise is in port at that exact time, and you're going to see her later on in the footage. But, there's no way that this is going to be sitting on the shore between December 7th and May 1942. So he probably had a bunch of sailors haul this out to the surf for effect. But still, it is a Japanese aircraft.
For those who were wondering, I mean, it is not the only Japanese plane that was shot down over Kaneohe. That was the Zero of Lieutenant Aida. Okay, so here we have the burial ceremony going on for the 18 men who were killed on Kaneohe, the 18 Americans, I should say, not Aida. He's buried nearby. I was able to read some of the placards, the two graves that are closest to us. The first one is Walter Scott Brown, who was a 25-year-old machinist mate from North Loop, Nebraska, which is right in the dead middle of the state, had a population of about 500 people during the war. Intriguingly, that grave is empty because when they did this ceremony, his body had not yet washed up on the shore. It's not recovered until the 12th, and then it was buried separately. But they went ahead and prepared a grave for him and the two other guys who were also MIA at this point in the ceremony. Right next to it, the flag that's second to the left, that is the grave of Raphael August Watson, known as Ralph, who is one of the most popular men on the base. He's actually a New Orleans boy. And he had a wife and two very young sons. One had just been born. They too were living on the base. And he was a big, garrulous guy, very popular. And ends up getting shot in the arm and in the chest and expires later in the afternoon of December 7th, leaving his widow and two kids. He is now actually buried in New Orleans. There's a picture out on, you can find it if you go looking, and his eldest son actually just passed away in 2023. So anyway, just a little human element there.
So these are some of the more famous shots. You see this in the December 7th movie. You see this in just about any kind of newsreel, documentary about Pearl Harbor. You see this shot, and Ford had these sailors do this shot about 10 times.
Yes, because they flub it here in the first one, and we're going to see that.
Yeah. These are not actors.
These are not actors. Right, so they do their thing. They're getting ready for the wreath laying.
And then, this is right on the beach at Kaneohe too.
And they're like, "Are we taking our hats off?" Oh, okay. Oops! Try that again, boys. Yeah. Much better. You can be taught.
This is some of the most famous, and there's still images of this too. And to be clear, a lot of times
there are better shots there.
When there's film footage being shot, there usually is a still man sitting there snapping too.
Yeah,
but sometimes it was just they literally just yanked out screen grabs and made still imagery out of this.
And you can see there Walter Scott Brown, and then next to it Raphael August Watson. Walter Scott Brown is actually going to have a destroyer escort named after him later on in the war, an Eberts class, DE 258.
Very cool.
Yeah.
VP 12. I was struggling for the last archival one we did. I was struggling for the number of the squadrons. VP 12, Patrol Squadron 12.
Okay,
that's who these guys belong to, and that's who those PBYs, those all burn up PBYs. That's where they came from. Was VP Victor Papa 12.
12.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, some really, really famous shots of this.
These graves were still here in 1944. There's actually another still photo in Wenger's book that shows his widow and 2 kids coming to visit the grave again in 44. Of course, he's eventually going to be moved.
Do we know when they move him back? They must move after the war, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, because they usually did that, and I think they started that in 46 or 47, bringing the boys home if the family wanted to bring them home.
Here we have burning aircraft.
Yeah, so this is clearly a staged shot. And again, if you want to go and look through all of the footage,
yes,
I'll put the numbers in the show notes and you can go find it and look through it yourself. But what John Ford did for his movie is he set fire to the wreckage.
some of the boneyard. Yeah.
That's all he did, man.
Right.
And he's just, he's making a movie. So he's shooting this for effect. So you'll see. And the reason I pulled this out, okay, let's go back here for a second. The reason I pulled this out of the reels.
Look at the guy with the machine gun there.
And that is precisely why I did that.
That's beautiful.
You'll see that, this original footage of the attack on Pearl Harbor. No, it ain't, dude.
Nay.
It's John Ford stuff that he filmed for the movie to make it look like it was. I mean, again, it's what you do. But
right.
Yeah, this cat right here is he's not shooting a Japanese. He's no more shooting at Japanese planes than I am. He is probably tracking, a Goonie bird somewhere overhead with that 30 caliber. But it looks cool.
It looks cool. Like you're gonna hit diddly squat in a moving truck with a 30 cal. Come on, man.
Right. Exactly. But it looks neat. I mean,
it's sweet.
It looks
fire
cool.
Truck,
there goes the fire truck going by, not putting out the fire on the plane.
As fire trucks so often do.
Yeah. And there goes a deuce and a half going by. Again, it's all for effect, but it's cool. You get to see, the equipment of the times and everything else. But
the tail sagging there. That's nice.
And this thing is just burning away. I mean, they probably put 2
50
PBYs worth of fuel.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway. And so again, just to say, if this was the attack, your boy ain't going to walk up there with a still camera and take a picture of burning wreckage. Keep that in mind, guys, when you see some of this footage.
Yeah.
You got to look at everything in the footage there.
Right.
But again, it's still cool nonetheless.
Yeah, pretty cool.
All right, I'm going to scrub through this.
Here's some of the actual hangars.
Yeah. And
30 cal and the blister there. Yeah.
Same stuff here. He's staging this for the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the real hangars. I mean, this is, this is definitely Kaneohe. This is the real deal.
Well, and some of these guys did die right down on the apron. The reason that Walter Scott, his body was not recovered immediately is he was one of the plane guards. And so he was out in the water, apparently. And got washed away.
I would imagine he probably got strafed if I was to guess. If he was out.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, he got strafed and killed in the water. Lieutenant Aida, he was one of the group commanders, I think, on Shokaku. And he is the only plane that is shot down over Kaneohe. There is actually a marker on base that shows the actual impact site of his plane. He just came right down in the middle of the base and crunched it into a berm. So he was busily strafing and ended up taking ground fire. And that's what ended up happening to him. Down he goes. We recover his body, and he is buried with full military honors, relatively close by to the other sailors that we saw earlier. So here we go. So the caption on on Mike Wenger, he shows a photo actually of the dispensary in Kaneohe, and mentions with the detached morgue visible to the right, to which sailors transported Lieutenant Aida's shattered body and deposited it unceremoniously in a garbage can, a decision most likely reflecting a lack of space for his remains rather than a lack of respect for a slain enemy. But that's where it ended up initially. So there you have it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So for the majority of John Ford's time, at least from February through March of 1942, he spent, and his cameraman Arling spent a lot of time in the harbor. And why did he spend a lot of time in the harbor? Because at that point, that was the height of the salvage operations in Pearl Harbor. They're trying to get these battle wagons out of the mud. Mm-hmm. And this one that we're looking at right here, this is USS California.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is California. California, we went through the last time we did this footage. We focused a lot on California because that's where the cameras were. They were shooting on California most of the time. But she took an absolute beating during the raid, and it took several months to get her out of the mud. They patched her hull, and you'll see some footage of West Virginia here in a little bit, and you'll see the patches. By the patches, what I'm talking about. She was refloated on March 25th, 1942.
Right.
So we are tagging these shots that we're looking at here between March 25th and March 27th, 1942. She was moved out of the way in early April 1942, and on April 9th, she's put in dry dock number 2, where she will remain till like June.
I was just going to give our listeners just sort of the brief synopsis. We have a number of damaged battleships in Pearl Harbor. Obviously, Oklahoma and Arizona are just completely destroyed, and we're not going to do anything with them initially. But what ends up happening is Maryland and Tennessee, which were trapped behind West Virginia and Oklahoma, they had to demolish their quays to get them out. And so Maryland, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania sail as a trio out of the harbor on 20 December. Then on 12 February, the Nevada is refloated and she gets out of Dodge. And now we get into the refloatings that are happening in the March and May timeframe. And yeah, California is refloated on the 25th.
She and you can tell it's California. People are going, well, how can you tell? You can tell California. She had this like bird bath looking
on the back of. Yeah,
this is actually the forward end of her.
Forward, okay.
Yeah, her foremost mainmast. This is on the forward section of it. She had her after, because you wonder where the heck did her after cage mask go? They removed it. They yanked it off. Okay. They put it ashore, and it was used as an observation tower. If you look at pictures of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, right. You were talking about that last. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of neat, and it stays there for a long time. Like I want to say it might have stayed there through the war. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it was there a long damn time, and it was her entire cage mast, her entire after cage mast. The basket and the whole and the fighting top and the whole shebang. Just boop, just yanked it off and put it ashore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is California here, and it, the I want to go back here for a second. Let's go back. Yeah, all right. Went a little too far. Look at the friggin' water.
I was just going to talk about that. It's like, it gives you an indication of just how large battleships are, because those things are injecting enough water to fill up your kiddie pool like every 4 seconds or something like that. There's a lot of water in this puppy.
Man, literally tons of water.
Tens of thousands of tons. Yeah, that's a lot.
And you want to get into some nerdery? I got into some nerdery. So what is the pump? Again, the things you do. This is a Pomona deep well power pump. Is what it is.
This is where I say that was going to be my guess.
Sure.
Pomona in California. Pomona pump. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you find that out?
Nav source. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that I dug that deep.
Yeah.
I was looking on Nav source, which, by the way, if anybody's never looked at Nav source, NAV source, all one word, it is a treasure trove of naval ship photography, mostly pre Korea and everything before that. But yeah, they have a picture of these damn pumps just shooting that water out of the side of California.
Yeah.
Over the side, yeah. And they had them on all the big ships, but yeah. I mean, they were just tremendously powerful. And they're literally like a huge vacuum, like a big sump, and they're just spitting it out into the harbor right there.
Don't stand next to it. That's cool.
Yeah. Elegant looking ships, even though they were old, the big, beautiful, rakish bow. Yeah, just beautiful vessels. So yeah, so this is, late March, early April 1942 is the time period for these shots here of California. And you can see they're shoving her. You got the tugs out here. One of these, I think it's this one, is Hoga, that survived, long time. They're shoving her basically out of the friggin' way, getting her out of the way, and they're going to move her up, tie her up alongside shore, and then they're going to move her in a dry dock later. So what they did on California, and we're going to maybe in the future we can do an episode and like really dig into the salvage efforts of the ships, because that's fascinating. They yanked her guns out of her turrets.
Yeah. Get rid of any of the extra weight.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. They yanked her guns out of her turrets, and they did the same to, if I remember correctly, I think they did the same to Weavy, but I'm not 100%
I think that's right.
We can get to that later because we'll show you West Virginia here in a little bit too.
Yeah.
And the damage, good gracious God, the damage that's done to West Virginia is appalling when you see it.
Yeah.
It really is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so here she is being moved into dry dock very, very slowly.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting about California, and again, we can get into this if we do an episode on the salvage efforts, is she actually had an explosion. They had her sealed up, and by sealed up, I mean watertight with the wooden, coffer dams, essentially.
Yeah.
And there was like some sort of explosion inside of her. They think now it was probably like a welding torch and a acetylene torch.
Oh, wow.
Just went kaboom.
Okay.
It was a big explosion, and it actually blew one of the patches open.
Okay.
And the water went all the way back in the damn ship. It didn't go all the way through because they had some watertight integrity in different portions, but it delayed her actually getting out of the mud for weeks.
Right. Is anybody hurt in that explosion?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I would imagine probably so, but I
sounds like
I don't recall. But it was a big kaboom. I mean, it blew the patch clear off the side of the ship.
Yeah. Yeah, she is a mess.
Yeah. And it's the color on this. It's amazing that it's color number one, but it's not the clearest of color.
No.
But if you look right here, that is her water line.
Oh, when she was okay.
Yeah. When she was down in the mud. And I mean, you can look at still images, in the days after when she's like really settled down. And I mean, her decks were damn near awash. And if there was a big wave, they were awash. But yeah, this right here, and you'll see it on Weavy too. This right here is her water line. So she was
good 20 feet. Yeah.
Way down there. So this is going to be April 9th, 1942.
Okay.
Is when this is, because this is the day that she was moved into dry dock. Again, John Ford went in there, or Arlen, or both went in there multiple times and shot footage over and over and over again because they were trying to document the salvage efforts to a degree.
Sure.
Not a lot of this stuff. You don't see a lot of this stuff anywhere else. I don't think it really makes it to much degree into his December 7th film, but he was documenting this. He wasn't there just to make a movie. He's also documenting material for the U.S. Navy. So he's documenting the salvage efforts. But yeah, and she goes very, very slowly. This is neat. This is CV2. If you remember again when we did the archival episode and we were talking about some of the footage is not from Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And you could barely see Lexington in the background of the footage. This is around the same time period. This is USS Lexington CV2. This is March of 1942. I think the exact date is March 27th, 1942.
Okay. What a big ship.
She's a monster.
Yeah.
She is absolutely tremendous.
Yeah. And had the turning radius to show for it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's why she sucks up the damage that she does, obviously. But yeah, she's just an absolutely tremendous ship. She's moving in here. This is after, laying Salamao raids and all that stuff.
Yep.
This is after Butch O'Hare's action and all that jazz. She's moving in here for a refit, which of course will be, let's go back. which of course will be her last refit. Because
Right.
because she's here till I think I want to say it's April the 9th before she.
I can't remember
out.
the exact day.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But what she's doing in here, you'll see. You can see them clear right here. Mm-hmm. These are her 8-inch guns. You see the one here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's the tip top of one right here. If the footage was not as blurry as it is, you'd probably be able to make it out clearer. But she's going to have these 8-inch guns yanked off of her flight deck, and they're going to make basically a jury-rigged 1.1 gallery. They're going to put, a couple here, one here, a couple here, one here.
Yeah.
And if you look at the footage of her sunk, you can see that it's like a rounded corrugated aluminum. So I mean, they were just slapping these things,
it on. Give me some automatics. Yeah, right.
That's it. And remember when we did the Yorktown stuff, we were talking about, she only had a few 20s and a few 50s and everything else. Well, I think Lex got most of the 20s because they replaced, a lot of the, again, you can't see
longer deck edge.
Yeah, a longer deck edge. She had boat pockets back here. And on the other side, on the port side, she had boat pockets that they yanked the big motor whaleboats out, and they essentially just made these platforms, and they just bolted 20s down on there and said, "Here you go." So she likely got a lot of the 20s that may have gone to Yorktown, which made no difference in the end. But that's what she's doing. She's getting the 8-inchers moved off. She's getting her 1.1s added to it. She's getting a lot of her 50s yanked off and the 20s added to it here. She gets like some. To get really dorky, she gets some flag bridge, modifications here, but I'm not getting that. But yeah, that's Lex. You'll see her again in the footage here in a minute, but yeah, that's her moving into Pearl for her last, what would be her last refit. Of course, this right here, this is USS West Virginia.
Yep.
And I mean, she burned like a Roman candle.
Yeah.
Weavy took an absolute pounding. She really did. We were talking about this before we recorded, John. I mean, of all the battleships that were raised, she was easily the most heavily damaged.
Yep.
And God.
Yeah, no, she doesn't get her refit until after they rebuild Tennessee and Maryland. And so she has to wait for that. And then end result of that is going to be that she is not going to be ready for sea trials again until July of 1944. So when we're looking at this footage here, she is a good 2 years away from, being recommissioned. And when she does come out of that refit, they realize, this ship is never going to go through the Panama Canal again. We're going to scrap this puppy after the war as soon as we're done with her. And so they give her an enormously deep anti-torpedo protection system. I forget how wide she is. She's like 126 feet or something like that. She's got serious torpedo blisters on her. But here she is still in the mud, and it's going to take a real doing here to get her off that mud.
And that real doing is underway right here, because what you're seeing here, these are, no lie, like wooden cofferdams, or like wooden, the Navy called them patches, but it's a cofferdam is what it is. It's just like this big, and you'll see them lowered and down in the water. It's really neat. They just lower these things in there and they push them alongside and they seal them alongside, and then they start pumping the water out. But this is where she just got,
just gutted,
disemboweled, right?
Yeah. Eight torpedo hits or something like that.
It's just, she takes an absolute beating. So ballpark date, if you're wondering what the date on this is post March 24th, 1942. What date? I don't know, but it's post March 24th. And I say that because you'll see this here in a minute. I'll get to it. But you can tell Ford's probably in like some little motor whaleboat.
Yeah.
Bobbing around.
Easy, And again, look how low down her main deck is in comparison to the water line. Yeah, she's like 2 feet above the water.
Mm-hmm. She took an absolute beating. Okay, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, everybody knows what that is.
But and you'll see Arizona here in pretty close up detail. But again, the fire, and we went through that the last time we did this. Look at the heat damage here.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've always sort of mentally thought that when you get to her rear mast, that's sort of the demarcation line between the living and the dead.
Yeah.
That you might have had guys who, would come off the ship intact if they were that far aft, but everybody that was forward of that, you can see that her stack is just completely gone as well. Yeah, everybody in front of that got turned into flying mince, frankly.
Yeah. So yeah, Jesus. I mean, exactly to your point. If you look, aft of this, this is in pretty good shape. It really is. It's in pretty good shape. I mean, the paint is, whether it's blistered or not, God knows, but I mean, it's in pretty good shape. It's not all rusty and raggedy. And then you look at the forward part of it, and I mean, it's just a melted hunk of iron.
That's what happens when 500 plus tons worth of cordite go kaboom. Yeah. It really is remarkable.
They're already doing salvage efforts trying to get whatever is usable on Arizona off. There's no stern crane. Her aircraft crane is gone.
Right.
I'm not.
They're going to take her aft turrets off as well.
They are, and I think they use the barrel of one or two of the guns goes on either Pennsylvania or Nevada or something.
I can't remember, but yeah, they're used. And I see that sort of rent there in the upper fighting top, and I don't know what the heck is going on there.
Neither do I, and it looks like something is here too. Whether they
cut it away
out to maybe there were dudes trapped in there and didn't want to get down because of the fire. I don't know. I have no earthly clue. But it's quite evident that, that is missing. And that was not like that on the 7th of December.
Right.
So something happened. All right. What we're looking at here is California.
Yeah, just all these, portable work buildings and stuff like that. Machine sheds and diver sheds and all that stuff. I love the 55-gallon drums in the air there, moving them in with a crane.
So of course I had to put this in there because why
Heck
not?
Yeah.
It's the Enterprise. There's no
the
Enterprise.
Yeah, it's coolest carrier ever.
Dang right. And this
so
is
blue.
Be...
I just love the color here. That we're able to see her paint job. It's just really neat.
So for those wondering, I don't know what color. It's blue. There were various shades of blue the U.S. Navy used at this time. Ocean gray is one of the colors, and she was actually blue. Sea blue is one. Navy blue was another, but she was darker than that. So
that's pretty cool.
Time period for this, you're looking at March of 1942. An exact date, again, I don't know.
Right.
You'll see her again later on. And I say March because in another shot, you'll see Lex in the background. So Lex and Enterprise were in port at the exact same time.
Got it. Yeah. So
Lex
this is
coming into March. Yeah.
Shortly before the Doolittle raid. Yeah. At this very moment, Hornet with the B-25s on her is probably on her way to Pearl.
Mm-hmm. From San Francisco.
Except no, they met her in mid-ocean as I'm thinking about it. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. They did.
She never came into Pearl.
So
Arizona
now from. So if you go to Ford Island, this is the view you would have had. Looking across, the visitor center is where the visitor center is now. Is like right over
a little further left. Yeah, that's actually the submarine base over there.
So here we go. So Ford's on Ford Island, and he's panning to the right.
Yep.
Here's West Virginia, laying in the mud. And this is freaking cool. All right, hang right here. All right, here we go. So here's Lex. So this is March. As I said, this is March 1942.
Yeah, you can see her ginormous stack there, right?
No mistake in that.
Yep.
And then this over here, it's either Pennsy or it's Nevada. And I'm frankly not, and I'm pretty sure it's Nevada. I'm pretty sure it's Nevada because Pennsylvania, when you said Pennsylvania, she leaves and goes back to the States like
20th December. Yeah, so it has to be Nevada. Yeah, that's cool.
Gotta be Nevada. And this is a New Orleans class cruiser here too, but I don't know which
one. Right. Yeah, so they're patching Nevada up in preparation for getting her out of there as well. That's neat.
Yeah. Again, what day in March? Again, post March 24, because March 24 is when they removed the after cage mast from Weavy. But yeah, I just thought that was incredibly cool. And then he goes back to the other side. We'll move it through. But yeah, this is what Pearl Harbor looked like in late March of 1942. Now this is just neat stuff right here. So, you're wondering, how do you get these cofferdams on the side of these battleships and other ships and things like that? Through dudes like this.
Right.
They're going to lower them down there with cranes, but there's guys, these Navy divers are going to go down there and they're going to make sure everything's, quite literally, not to be funny, ship shape.
Yeah.
And I mean, these dudes look like something straight out of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yep.
But that's
just, think about the water too. Just full of oil and muck and.
Well, look how gross they are. Look at their dive suits. I mean, they're covered. You can see it here. It's like streaming down his shoulder. That's oil. That's bunker oil. And these guys aren't exactly clean either. Yeah. And they're just,
check out the hammer as well, hanging from the side of his belt there. Yeah. And these guys saw some terrible things.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. These are the guys, when they're going in there to get stuff to patch things up. They're running into decomposed corpses that have been down there since the 7th of December.
Yes.
And some guys who'd been dead long after that. Of course, in West Virginia, there's guys, I think, several guys that survived for several days after.
Yes.
But, to your point exactly, look at what's in the water. Look at all the oil just floating up. This is West Virginia. This is quite obviously torpedo damage on her port side.
Yep.
Look at the size of that hole.
Just demolished. Yeah.
I mean, you can see the water conditions that these dudes are working in. It's, you can't see much until you're right up on it.
Yeah.
And you can imagine some of the surprises, as I said, that they found when they were going in there. But yeah, I thought this was incredibly cool. This is how they're remedying the disaster.
From the guy with the pipe there,
And so I don't know. This dude here coming at you is a sailor, sure, but I do know that they used a lot of Native Hawaiians, to help in the effort of getting these
cofferdams in place.
Yeah, these things on there. And I say that guy was a sailor because he was wearing a U.S. Navy dungaree uniform. But
look at the
oil and funk on these things.
Yeah.
And this is exactly how they did it. They craned them over there and they put them alongside, and the divers would go down there and do this is the same cat.
Bolt them together. Yeah.
It's the same dude. He's all over the place.
Yeah, right. You're right.
Clearly he's a big wig. I don't know what he's doing, but
he knows what he's doing.
Knows what the hell he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of zip through this.
Mm-hmm.
Same dude again with the watch cap on.
Yeah, right. Isn't that interesting? Who was that guy? He's probably no longer with us. Almost certainly not. But just, these moments captured in time.
The hoses. He played a big part. To what he did, I don't know, or to whom he was responsible to, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's all over this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Were these operations ongoing 24/7?
Be honest with you, I don't know. I don't think so, because there was still the big scare of being attacked, by Japanese aircraft at night, and they're not going to light that up. And, I mean, as difficult as it is to see in that, I mean, you can look at the water; it's green. It's not very
turgid.
Clear. Yeah. I doubt they're going to be doing that at night.
Yeah, I just kind of wondered.
I would imagine that maybe when they get it in a dry dock, probably they could cover certain aspects and you could get inside and start doing things inside for sure. But in the harbor itself, I don't think so. All right, so here we are. We're actually aboard. This is California. Again, they turned her turrets out and they cranked some of the barrels out, and they obviously you can see the divots where the barrels would go. They covered the turrets so they didn't try to get as much of the funk out of there as they possibly could. And they're going to pan up, and you're going to see the stern of Enterprise here. She's parked right in front, and there it is right yonder. But what's aside from this being the Big E, which is just always cool, what's interesting about this too is those torpedo nets. They're a little late in putting those up, but at least they got around to it at some point. Yeah, you might have, might have been useful, a few months before, but as they say, better late than never.
Yeah, right.
Goodness.
Oopsie.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. But yeah, I mean, you can see they're still just pumping the water right out over here.
Yeah.
There's another one of our Pomona pumps.
Thank you, Nav Source.
Yeah, absolutely. Great resource.
Yeah.
If you've never looked at it, do so. You will go down the rabbit hole, I assure you.
All right.
You will spend hours in there. Some of the photographs are not the highest resolution, but some of them are. So
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So they're getting ready to lift her out of the mud as well. And when they do, again, you can see, this is her main deck.
Yeah.
And you can see there's portholes
right
here.
Down. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, she is way down. I'm sorry, this is her main deck because here's her.
They're bollards. Yeah.
Bollards. Yeah.
I was going to say that's her. Yeah, her 01 level, I guess.
Yeah, she's way down in the mud. Way down in the mud. She's moving through again. Like you said, this is right before the Doolittle raid.
Yep. It's about to go.
There's the tower. The tower's still there today, as we all know.
Yeah.
The hangars are still there. Most of them are still there today.
Yep. And that is a cool museum.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
all sorts of good birds in there.
So they're moving West Virginia. The footage that you'll see later, you actually see them yanking the aftermast off in different stages. Here's USS California moving into dry dock.
Right. Saltwater is corrosive.
Big time. Big time. Because if I'm not mistaken, her name was painted in white letters.
Okay.
But I don't think it was red. I'm pretty sure that's rust.
Yeah, that's all rust. There. You bet. Yep, there she is.
And it's California, of course, because triple gun turrets, not the duals that West Virginia would have.
Right.
Okay, now this is West Virginia moving into dry dock as well. They've got her right there. Okay. So we saw them before. We saw the divers going down and they were lowering the cofferdams alongside of her.
Yep.
And the divers are going to seal them up in there. Well, here they are. This is you can see the oil, as she was rising, if you will. You can see where the water lines were and all that jazz. But this is where all of her torpedo damage was. This is the patch.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. How many torpedoes was she? I think
seven? I think 8. 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Yeah. And she took an absolute beating, just an absolute beating. Here you'll see some of the torpedo damage. Now they've removed, because she's in dry dock, obviously the patches, with the exception of this one, are no longer alongside. And I mean, look at this. They those fish just ripped her open. Here they are actually removing the patches. And you think about it, the tremendous effort that went into getting these things, watertight to some degree, getting them pumped out, getting them into dry dock, removing the patches, making them watertight again, and then, like you said, sending them back to the U.S. for 2 years of refits. That just goes to show you that, the U.S. Navy did most certainly think that battleships were very important.
Were useful.
We all know. Yeah, were useful.
She took 7 torpedo hits. Calling up my diagram here. Yeah, 7 for her, 5 for Oklahoma, 2 for California.
Yeah. And I mean, all down. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll give you an impression of the size. Look at these dudes right here.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah, just the dishing out of the plating there. It just, holy Moses. Yeah. It just blew her up. Japanese torpedoes worked.
Yeah, they did.
The Type 91 was a good fish. Yeah.
Yeah. She was in, significant danger of just going and pulling in Oklahoma and rolling over. And it wasn't for that's Claude Ricketts,
right?
Who was the gunnery officer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
he was the one that gave the order to counterflood because, as we know, Binion was opinion was deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one that gives the order to counterflood her, and that's why she just plops level down in the mud. But she was going over.
Yeah.
If you go back to the footage that we showed the last time we did one of these, you see her, the big basket mast, and I mean, she's tilting over to the port. She's looking like she's about to go.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Ricketts, who received an award, I forget what it was, but
again, just look at the damage here. Holy buckets.
Yeah, she took just an absolute beating. When they get her patched up here in the yard, of course, there's pictures not of which are in here, but they remove all of her superstructure pretty much. It's just like her bridge is there and everything else is gone. And they take her out and they have her do a trial run not far from Pearl to make sure that she's not gonna spring a leak and go down.
Okay,
she's
right.
Been that
badly,
as you can see clearly here, she'd been that devastated that they wanted to make sure that she was gonna hang out for the whole ride back to the States.
Yeah, cutting away all the plates and whatnot.
Yeah. Look at the size of this hole here.
Yeah.
This dude
dishing again.
How tall is he? I don't know. Probably, between 5'10" and 6 foot, 5, I don't know. But I mean, look at the size of that.
Yeah.
Just a massive hole. I mean, they just absolutely pummeled her. Absolutely pummeled her. Gets close-up shots. I mean, just ripped her seams wide open here.
Yep.
And John Ford being John Ford, he's going to make sure you get all your glory shots of old.
You got to have some flags, waving and defiantly. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. For you modelers out there, that's a good close-up of her yard arms. If you want to replicate it, knock yourself out. So I have no idea what submarine this is. I have looked and looked and looked and looked, and I could not figure it out. If somebody's watching this and you can figure it out, please let us know.
Obviously going past Oklahoma. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's Okie, rolled over. And then we're going to make our way past West Virginia here. And then, of course, you're going to see Arizona. But I'm going to speed this footage up just a hair because the submarine is absolutely crawling. And again, the date, this is going to be before March. And they're these big cranes here, that's what they're there for, is to yank this thing off.
Right.
I said before March. It's March, but it's before March 24th, 1942. Mm-hmm. And again, Ford's making them do the same scene 115 times, but that's what directors do. That's great. Do it again.
Do it again.
Yeah, that was even better. Do it again.
Do it again.
And you can see again, all on the same day, they've already got the mast down. She's out, and there's the Enterprise
right Enterprise there. Yep. Yeah, I'm sure you could figure out from the records, okay, what submarine sortied on the 24th of March, and
and that's the question too, is like, did she sortie, or is she just putting around the harbor? Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, good point.
Ford had a lot of pull. I mean, he could get a lot of things done. And I mean, now I think he's a commander at this point, or he might still be a lieutenant, but not a lieutenant commander, but I'm pretty sure he's a commander. And he had sway. So he could pretty much make anything happen if he wanted to.
Yeah. Another shot of Enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is just cool because again, it gives you the expansive view of the harbor on March 24. Or well, this is going to be after. It's probably going to be about the 27th, 1942.
Why don't you salute again?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I clipped this out, I actually called it Salute Fest because it's all they're doing. Man.
That's beautiful. Oofda.
Yeah, I mean, just look at that. It's a miracle because one of the more famous Arizona survivors was Don Stratton,
and
Don Stratton's position when the ship got hit was in one of the gun directors, which was, I want to say, it was like right here somewhere, and he got severely burned.
Yes,
in the director, and then when he got out, he went hand over hand to the Vestal, I believe.
Yeah, they fired a line over to him or something like that, and he had to climb out hand over hand.
He's one of the few that I met briefly. Wow.
So here's Weavy, obviously. Again, they have a
16-inch guns.
Yeah. And
Oklahoma.
there's a really good close shot of Oklahoma here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a mess.
Not every day in Hawaii is a cloudless day, but most of them are.
Right. As Bill would attest.
Yeah, indeed. All right, here's Nevada. This is USS Nevada. Of course, you can see what's left of Battleship Row back here. But this is definitely USS Nevada, and you can tell the tugs are inching her back towards, I don't remember which dry dock she went into, but they're bringing her to that station, bringing her to the dry docks. All right, we'll scrub through this.
B-26 Marauders, one of my fave planes. What a cool bird. Yeah. And it's very likely that these are some of the planes that ended up at Midway. They sent a quartet of these planes up there, and 2 of them are going to make it through the battle unscathed, and 2 are going to be shot down attacking Nagumo's task force around 0700. So it seems reasonable to suppose that some of these aircraft may be those very planes.
Mm-hmm. It's quite likely.
Yep.
Quite likely, yeah.
These poor guys. Can you imagine Army, Air Force, dudes, they get sent up to Midway and like, you're going to learn how to torpedo a ship. That's not what we do. Yeah.
The Japanese carrier force.
Yeah. Here's a torpedo. Have you ever seen one of these before? We're going to strap it to your bird. Lord.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Have fun.
A lot of aircraft in the air. P-40s is what you just saw here a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying this is a Lockheed Hudson, John?
Lockheed Hudson, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as up on my aircraft as I probably should be.
Yeah, this plane was no great shakes. We exported a number of them. A lot of them end up getting used for anti-submarine patrol duties out on the East Coast too. It was effective in that role. B-26 though, what a hot plane.
She was a hot plane. They called it the Widowmaker.
Yeah, kind of a cranky beast to fly because it was.
Now here, I think, is your B-18.
This is a B-18 Bolo. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, look at that big square nose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. In a sort of ungainly kind of way.
Yeah. That's a 24. That's a lib.
24, yeah.
And again, it's cool to imagine, for us real dorks, it's cool to imagine Pearl Harbor being, a beehive of activity. And it is. After January 42, I mean, it is quite literally a beehive of activity.
Well, and this is one of the reasons that Nagumo, I got a 17 there. It's one of the reasons that Yamamoto does not want to. Here's another one of those B-18 Bolos. What an ugly plane. Good Lord.
Yes, it is.
Really. Yamamoto wanted to fight a battle in the Central Pacific, but he wanted it to be far enough away from Oahu that the organic air power on Oahu, which had been beefed up tremendously after the attack, could not intercede into that battle, which is why he selected Midway, because it's a good 1,100 miles away. And that meant that none of the, light bombers and fighters could get involved in the party. Weavy again.
Yeah, this is Weavy again. Yeah, so now, quite obviously, they've got her up and ready to go. She's going to move into the dry dock as we saw before. I'm going to scrub through this.
Yep. There she is, actually floating.
And you can tell if you go back to the earlier footage we showed you, this is all primer. It's all paint primer. This was not on it, but when they moved it into dry dock, but it is when she comes out.
Got it.
And I'm just going to go out on a limb, and again, without the damage control, without the harbor reports or anything like that, I'm just going to assume they're basically just trying to see if the sucker's going to float.
Yeah.
And stay afloat before they actually run her out. Because as I said before, when they move her back to the States, all this stuff is gone. They pull all this out to keep her, as as steady as she can possibly be.
Yeah, right. And you can see, they're still just pumping scads of water out of her too.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, without looking at the exact reports, I can't give you.
To a certain extent, the fact that we even bother refurbishing her, knowing that it's going to take us 2+ years, is just it's kind of a thumb in the eye sort of move, really. It's just like, no, damn it, you're not going to sink this battleship. We're going to recommission her even if we don't really need her. Right. The same, frankly, is true of the 2 destroyers that were sunk in the dry dock, Cassin and Downs.
Cassin and Downs, yeah.
I mean, we used some of their machinery and built new destroyers around them. That too was sort of H.P. Wilmot described it in his Pearl Harbor book as just an act of willfulness on our part, that we were just not going to let these 2 ships be sunk because we're going to rebuild them, even though they were essentially entirely new vessels.
I mean, to a degree, with the battle wagons, you can understand. I mean, West Virginia, as you said, because she had to move. She couldn't lay there forever. They had to get her out of there regardless. And when they get her in the dry dock, I mean, they're going to say, yeah, it's going to be a long haul, but we can fix this thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, because that's a lot of firepower. That's 8 16-inch 45 caliber main battery guns on.
Yeah, that's not an insignificant.
No, and they don't grow on trees. And I mean,
right.
So you gotta use them. And I mean, so let's just say this is June 42. What the heck?
Yeah, the outcome of the war is far from decided at this point. Nobody knows.
Exactly.
We may need this thing. So
and of course, we do.
We use her.
She puts paid to Yamashiro there at Surigao Strait with her first salvo.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Yeah. Payback's a bummer. Yeah.
Yeah, as they say, revenge is best served cold, my man.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So we'll scrub through the rest of this. Of course, here she's moving back into dry dock, or actually she's moving up alongside the pier here, I believe. Yeah, she's moving up alongside the pier. But they're going to move her back into dry dock again at some point before they
yoink off all of her superstructure, right?
All the topside stuff off.
It really is pretty impressive when you think about it. Yeah, 7 torpedo heads. Holy Moses.
Yeah, that's a lot of. Yeah, now she is moving into dry dock.
Yeah. Old Glory doing the flappy thing.
Yeah, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the flappy thing. Yeah.
Got to do it. Thank you, John Ford.
Absolutely. Here's Nevada. Right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Clear as a bell. Again, this is her water line where she went kathunk at different times and just
right off Hospital Point.
The tripod mast battleships, when they converted them over from the cage to the tribe, they were cool looking ships.
They were.
Oklahoma, Pensy, and Arizona. They were.
Yeah.
They were pretty slick looking vessels. They were not modern by any,
to an extent too. You can look at Nevada and we're fortunate that she was moving and attracted the eye and acted like a magnet for all the second wave dive bombers that came in and plastered her with totally inappropriate weapons when those bombs could have been used to much better effect against that quartet of cruisers that was moored over in near the repair basin. So, you can say that Nevada kind of took one for the team here and kept those cruisers in action, which frankly were much more valuable assets to us in the early part of the war than a battleship like this would have been.
Yeah. These old girls don't see any kind of appreciable action until Attu.
Yeah,
I think that's Pensy that goes out there.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Pennsylvania is she is. She's one of the ones out there, providing naval gunfire support for the Battle of Attu. So I mean that's that's a fair.
And she ends up being one of the least upgraded of these ships because she was in fairly decent shape.
Right, and I was going to say I think it's because of the lack of damage that she really sustained.
I mean, when you look at Tennessee and West Virginia, when they come out of those overhauls, they look completely different.
Yeah. Of course, here she is under her own power.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Launch zipping around there.
Beautiful shot. You know, you got to have the glory shot of the battle wagon heading back home.
Absolutely.
All right. We're almost
Excellent.
to the end of this here. And again, there's just more of Nevada going out. Okay, this is neat. So if you go back to the footage we did before, we see Oglala rolling over.
Yep.
Here she is rolling back over.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you put the footage side by side, you see her going this way, and then you see her going this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna speed it up because it does take a while.
Yeah, it does take a while, but
flop her over. But here she comes.
Floats and all that. Yeah, buddy.
Oops.
Yeah, that's about all there is there.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for the harbor.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff, I included this because this is, again, some of the B-roll that Ford shot, but
I just find it fascinating. This is, these are school children, and they are Japanese school children. You can look at the architecture of the schoolhouse itself. It's very Japanese, and when you see these little kids, they're obviously all Asian extraction.
Well, look at the haircuts too. They got
the haircuts, right? So we've got Japanese kids in their slit trenches that have been dug for potential air raids and that kind of thing.
And of course, the kids probably thought it was the coolest thing in the world. They get to go jump in a hole in the ground. We can go play in the dirt for 30 minutes. Awesome. Yeah. This is great.
Yeah. I forget how many 100,000. It was a very respectable portion of the overall population of Hawaii was Nisei and Sansei, Japanese.
And this is in the Pearl Harbor, or not, well, it's near Pearl Harbor. Where exactly this is, I do not know. This is not the Naval Yard because these are Army troops moving around here.
Yeah. John Ford wanted to have pictures of happy soldiers driving by in trucks. By God, here they are.
Exactly. Again, if you go and I'll put the real numbers up, you want to go look at them all. There's really neat shots, which I didn't include here because it's kind of out of our purview, but of downtown Honolulu. Some of which is one of these. This is not obviously relatively close to the harbor because here's a ship.
Yeah.
But, you get to see guys, walking down the streets. You get to see what downtown Honolulu and probably the Liberty District, frankly, look like in, January through May.
And by this time, we have 2 combat divisions on Hawaii, 24th and 25th, I believe. And this would be a very, very tough nut for the Japanese to have tried to invade, because not only are there, 2 infantry divisions here, but you've got thousands of naval personnel on the island as well, including base defense force folks. So, yeah, there was only really one opportunity for the Japanese to take this island, and that would have been on probably December 9th or 10th. And
but even then, though, I mean, do you think that would have been possible? I mean, and we can talk about this when we get to Pearl. I mean, there's a lot of American servicemen on.
Yeah, there are. On the other hand, you look at just how badly outnumbered they were in the Malayan campaign against the British, and they cleaned their clocks. I don't know that our troops were ready to face up to soldiers of the caliber that the Japanese could have brought to our shores. The thing is, it's one thing to take a carrier task force and run it down from the north at 24 knots, get it into launch position, do your thing, and then boogie out. It's quite another to take a 6 to 8 knot invasion force and ram it into the air envelope of a place like this for the better part of 2 days before you can even get to the beaches. So, anyway, speculation. Love this shot.
This is cool because I just thought, it has nothing to do with Pearl Harbor.
Right.
This is some of John Ford's stuff, but
so
this was kind of a nice segue. You know what I mean?
This must be from the Doolittle raid, right?
One has to imagine, because this right here is the Big E. You say, why? How do you know it's the Enterprise? Because there's no B-25 stacked on. You can see.
Yep.
And there's, and we'll do
fleet oilers there too. So yeah, my supposition would be actually that this is Enterprise's task force sortying to the north before they have rendezvoused with Hornet and her escorts, and then form into the the task force that's then going to go west towards Japan.
Agree.
A lot of destroyers there. Holy cats.
There's a ton of them. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6, 7.
And I can't tell what that is over there.
Yeah.
We can go back maybe and see. But yeah, no, I agree 100%. This is definitely Enterprise's task group, and we'll do another one of these with the Doolittle ray because I got a crap ton of footage.
Do you? Okay, yeah, I've not seen a lot of that. I'd love to see that.
Tons. Stuff shot on Hornet, stuff shot from Salt Lake City where Ford was, stuff shot from Enterprise, all kinds of stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
But anyhow, you can see that here's what is Combat Air Patrol? Well, you're looking at it because here
right
here.
Yep.
That's what that is. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this is Enterprise Task Force moving out. These are SBDs performing,
doing what they do,
doing their thing. Probably just doing practice dives. Really clear shots of this. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here you go. You want to, if it is Enterprise or not? Here you go. Wait a second, and you're gonna see. After this guy does his dive, any day. There you go.
Neat.
That is most definitely the Big 8 because they did not put the 25s up here. They were all back yonder.
Right.
But yeah, that's the Big 8. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it with this stuff. Again, there's a bunch of SBDs buzzing around, but they're just doing their thing, and that's pretty much it.
John Ford probably. Yeah, the last little shot here of this quad 1.1 unloading.
Yeah, we can. So this, that this is John Ford that shot this because this is a cruiser. This is a heavy cruiser. This is USS Salt Lake City.
Yep.
And that's cool. There you go. There's your 1-1s.
Right. And I was intrigued by the fact that the barrels are actually encased in a cooling jacket here, and so you see just the tip of the barrel recoiling, but the jacket around it is not. Yeah.
As opposed to the Bofors that are just
exactly
back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, this is really sort of the poor man's Bofors. We're going to ditch these things as soon as we can.
Well, and that's interesting you bring that up too, because that's one of the no, what the hell's going on there? But that's one of the issues with the 1.1s is that they would jam. They'd have a lot of stoppages in them because they would overheat.
Yeah.
So
whereas the Bofors was just you could dump clips in that thing all day long. Mm-hmm. It would fire and fire and fire. Anyway.
Barrels to spare. The Bofors had barrels to spare because you'd get along, and these are just beautiful shots here.
Yeah.
But you'd get inside the battleships, for instance, and you look, if you get inside the bowels of the battleships and you walk around the barbette on the inside, not on the inside of the barbette, on the outside of the barbette, on the inside of the ship, it's lined with Bofors barrels.
Right. That was fun.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. Archival footage. Kind of like it.
Yeah, archival footage is good stuff. You get a window in time. We always talk about windows in time capsules. These are the ultimate time capsules. So you get a pretty good idea of what you're looking at, and it's fun going through it because even though you've seen some of the stuff you've seen, a lot of the stuff you probably haven't, and even if you do, you see something new every single time. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna continue to do these things, huh, John?
Yeah, absolutely. Among other things, because we don't have to do massive amounts of prep work. I don't want to say that we're being lazy, but the fact that, we don't have to write 14, 15 pages worth of notes for each one of these is definitely a draw, and they're just cool.
It is cool. And I let us know if you do like this. I mean, we're probably going to do it regardless, but
don't care. We're still going to do it. So.
But it is cool. So, I kind of got a feeling you guys are going to dig on this. So, John, anything else you want to add before we wrap this one up?
No.
Cool, man. All right. Well, let's do it. With that, we want to thank you very much for listening and or watching to this episode of the Unauthorized History of the Pacific War podcast. Please give us a rating and review. And I strongly suggest that you watch us on YouTube. Otherwise, you're not going to understand what the heck we're talking about. Yep. So once again, my name is Seth Paridon. I want to thank you very much for listening and or watching. John, my friend, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm John Parshall. And Bill, if you're watching, we'll see you again next week.